ahead of the game.
Hi, I'm Kelsa Dickey, the CEO of the Financial Coach Academy and my financial coaching business, Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. My coaching journey began more than a decade ago with me helping people for free from my dining room table. What was once a little business of mine has grown into a 7-figure company that employs a team of people. My goal is simple, to help you fall more and more in love with financial coaching. I believe financial coaching is the most rewarding way to make a living. If you are an aspiring financial coach or have been coaching for years, I'm here to help you create a business you love that gets your clients massive results. Let's get to it. Hey, Financial Coach. Welcome to episode 20 of the Financial Coach Academy podcast. Oh, let's just cut right to the chase. How many of you saw the title of this episode and got a little smirk on your face like, ooh, here we go, and you could not hit play fast enough? How many of you read the title and thought, excuse me, and you've rejected the premise already and maybe even rolled your eyes at me? In this episode, I am going to explain why I think, my opinion, is that Dave Ramsey is not a financial coach. Before we dive in, though, let me first say, you are welcome to have a different opinion than me. I fully believe that your experiences, the things you have seen or heard, likely give you the perspective that you have. And that's not necessarily wrong, but it's probably different from my experiences or the things I've heard and seen. And those things give me the perspective that I have. Let me also say this. Dave Ramsey has helped a lot of people. I am not claiming otherwise. In fact, I am one of those people. I believe that he has helped a lot of people and he will probably continue to do so as a financial educator, not as a financial coach. I am not even saying in this episode that all of the advice he gives is bad or good. I am saying it's not coaching. In the last episode, we talked about exploring the and scenario and that things are not black or white. And I think that is perfectly true for this episode as well. Two things can be true. I can believe that Dave Ramsey helps people and that he's not a financial coach. Both of those things, in my opinion, can be true. It is not one or the other. This episode is going to continue the conversations that we have been having all the way back from episode 17, where we talked about Coaching 101, and then specifically what financial coaching is, the actual skill of financial coaching. We talked about Coaching 201 and a model for that. Episode 19, we talked about how to become an amazing financial coach, what great coaching looks like and feels like during coaching sessions. And I personally believe that pretending that Dave Ramsey is a financial coach is damaging to our profession of financial coaching. I have said this before. I am a financial coach. The name of this podcast is Financial Coach Academy. The name of my business is Financial Coach Academy. What I care about, what I am passionate about is financial coaching, okay? I personally want to advance the profession of financial coaching. My mission is to solidify the value that financial coaches offer, not financial educators, not financial counselors, not financial advisors. And it is not to say that those roles aren't important or valuable. And if you were to hop back to some of the very first episodes of this podcast, you will actually hear me say just how important I think those roles are. They're very important. They're essential. They're doing good work, and they are not my personal focus. That's not the focus of my business or this podcast. There are a number of reasons I strongly believe that Dave Ramsey is not a financial coach, and I am going to discuss those in this episode. In the prior episode, I shared 6 characteristics or rules for great coaching, and so I am going to use those main rules to guide this conversation for today's episode. In doing research for this episode, I decided to listen to a recent episode of The Dave Ramsey Show. I was able to find examples of each one of the points that I want to make. If you'd like to see or hear for yourself what I'm saying, the episode release date that I'm going to be mentioning or referencing in today's episode was released on February 8th, 2023. I believe the show was a re-release of a prior episode, because they were talking about a lot of things that happened in 2022 as sort of like just happening, recent events, that kind of thing. I don't know the original air date of the episode. It didn't say that. But if you were able to find the radio show or the episode from February 8th, 2023, that should be the correct one. So let's dive in to the 6 rules of great coaching and break each one of these down. Rule number 1, great coaching sounds like owning what you don't know. I am going to skip over this one because, frankly, I have no idea what Dave knows and doesn't know. And I don't listen to enough of his episodes to know if I ever hear him say he doesn't know something, or does he ever admit that he doesn't know something. He totally could, okay? I would also suspect that the guests on the show are curated. And what I mean by that is when someone calls into the show, they're asked questions before they actually get through to Dave on the show. So if it's a question he can't answer, I have a feeling those are filtered out. So I would actually suspect for this one that it's not something I can observe or assess, and not like in a realistic fashion, I would say. So I would like to believe that if he doesn't know the answer to something, he would say that. So rule number 2, let's move on to that one. Great coaching focuses on what's most important to the client when determining the best action to take. Great coaching focuses on what's most important to the client when determining what is the best action for the client to take. Coaching helps a person align their finances and make decisions with their values in mind. Dave's focus is on his values and what's most important to him. Now, if you share his values, you're probably good, but the 7 baby steps are focused on what Dave Ramsey thinks is most important. Also, he has a financial show. He's going to prioritize money because that's what the show is about, right? I don't fault him for this. I am not saying this makes him a bad guy for that. But what I think is that if you hear this and you think it is coaching, it's not. And that is simply my point. Okay. And I know when I first started my journey 15 years ago, it was all that I had. That was all my perspective. I didn't have another perspective of like what coaching actually looks and feels like. And my job is to make sure you are embracing a coaching method. Okay. The recurring advice that he gives supports what I am saying. Things like, you shouldn't step foot in a restaurant while you're in debt. This is telling people what they should think about certain expenses, and that is not coaching. We talked about this in the prior few episodes. You'll notice some people, maybe you are one of them, make adjustments to the 7 baby steps or to Dave Ramsey's most common advice that he gives. And you might say or hear people say something like, I didn't do it fully. I made some adjustments to make it work for me. And what you are hearing them say essentially is, I had to adjust things because what we care about certain things that Dave Ramsey doesn't. And that's good. I am glad to hear people can take a framework such as the 7 baby steps and say, here's the part that works for me and here are the parts that don't work for me or aren't in alignment with my values and the things that I care most about. Right? Unfortunately, some people don't know how to do that. And it's actually what people seek out a coach for. Right? I think the most obvious culprit here is this idea that everyone should follow the debt snowball. And listen, don't come for me, please. I'm not judging you if you did this. Shoot, this was me and my husband. This is how we chose to get out of debt. I did this. I am not throwing shade at the debt snowball. Please hear me. I know the argument on why the debt snowball is the best debt payoff strategy. So let's really quickly actually apply a coaching model to the argument that most people use, okay? A person experiences a win. They pay off their lowest balance debt. That is the circumstances, right? We talked about this coaching model a couple of episodes ago. So the circumstance line. A circumstance is a client experiences a win, right? They pay off their lowest debt. And supposedly, because they paid off a debt, they have the thought, which is the next line, I did it, right? Having that thought leads them to feel excited, which is their feeling line, so that they continued to stay focused and diligent on paying off debt. That's their action line, right? They stay focused. The end result, right, the bottom line, is that they get out of debt, right? Therefore, the argument is that the best method to get out of debt is the debt snowball. I mean, in that case, I totally understand what the argument is. It seems to follow the model perfectly, right? What if I told you, though, that I think it's the right observation, but the wrong conclusion? It's an attempt at applying a coaching model to getting out of debt, but I believe that it's misguided. The most important thing is not that a client pays off the lowest balance debt. It's not the circumstance, right? The most important thing in that model is what the client thinks, which is, I'm doing it, I'm getting out of debt, right? So because they paid off the lowest balance debt, they had the thought, I'm doing it, I'm getting out of debt. But the most important thing is the thought that they're having, not what triggered the thought, okay? And that they feel excited about paying off the rest of their debts. What is most important in that model is the buy-in and excitement that the client is experiencing. Those observations are what matters most. And here's the thing. You can think that I'm doing it. Like you can have that thought, I'm doing this, right? A client can have that buy-in and they can feel excited in all of the debt payoff strategies that exist. Clients can think, I'm doing it, and feel excited about getting out of debt without the circumstance being that they paid off a debt. I hope this is making sense. I talked a couple episodes about how in these episodes where we're talking about coaching, it's a kind of an abstract thought that we're having, right? We're talking about some abstract things. So I hope that I am talking about this in a way that is as clear for you as possible. There are so many ways where a client can be bought in and feel excited. It doesn't have to be triggered solely by the fact that they paid off one debt. Some clients come to us and they start coaching and they are already having the thought, I am getting out of debt no matter what it takes. They have that thought already. As a result of that thought, they feel committed, excited, focused, and their actions prove that and that their results happen in alignment with that. They end up getting out of debt, right? Not every client has to pay off a debt in order to show up in that way. Saying the debt snowball is the right way for everyone is assuming that the only way for a person to be bought in and excited is to have them pay off a debt right away first. And I just do not buy that. I have had clients use every debt payoff method out there. We actually coach our clients around 5 different methods, which I'm going to be covering in a future episode in just a couple of weeks here, with amazing success. Amazing success. And it's not just because of the debt snowball. Now, some of our clients absolutely follow the debt snowball. That is one option, but to say that it's the best one for everybody is not coaching. In the episode that I'm referring to or that I listened to for the Dave Ramsey show, there was a woman named Brenda who moved from the Midwest to California, where she is going to be for the next 3 to 5 years. Her house in the Midwest is paid off and she's renting in California. She wanted to know if she should buy in California while she's there or keep renting. Here are some of the quotes directly from Dave. Quote, "The only thing that matters is if it will go up in value enough to cover expenses when you sell." I just want to be clear. That's what's most important to Dave. I can think of a dozen other things that a client could say matters more to them than whether or not they would profit after 5 years. Let's say it's going to cost them $10,000. Let's say this decision to buy a house could possibly cost them $10,000, right? There are a number of clients who may say, I am willing to spend $10,000 to have a home that I live in for 5 years versus having a rental where the landlord could literally come and tell me at the end that my lease is up and I don't have a choice, right? The other quote from that episode was, quote, "Just rent. Life is simple when you rent," unquote. This client, and I'm not saying she did or didn't want this, but never expressed a desire for simplicity. Why life is simple when you rent? Who said that she wants life to be simple? Maybe she wants to own real estate, right? Maybe she wants to buy another property and take care of a home. And I have had clients who feel that their home is sort of their sanctuary, and it's really important to them to feel at home wherever they are. So now, I want to be clear. One reason that I think the Dave Ramsey Show is not coaching is because there's just not enough time to really do effective coaching during a radio show like setting. There's just not. Coaching in this case would be getting to the heart of why this client, Brenda, I think her name was, right? Let me scroll up in my notes a little bit. Yes, Brenda. It would be getting to the heart of why Brenda wants to rent and or own. We would play out various scenarios. We would be discussing the pros and cons of each one of those scenarios, and not just the financial pros and cons, but the emotional ones, the mental, time, short-term and long-term financial outcomes, the risk associated with it. We would talk about the risk and the reward of each potential option, and I would ask what the client thinks of those options. Are they okay assuming that risk? Because some people are okay assuming certain amount of risk compared to others, and that might be different than mine. This example with Brenda also provides my next example for point or rule number 3. But first, I just want to make sure you know that what I'm saying right now is that great coaching focuses on what's most important to the client when determining the best action to take. And in this example, that did not happen for Brenda. Okay. Now, number 3, the rule was that great coaching explores the and scenario. It doesn't encourage a black and white sort of thinking approach. There's no this or this, right? We try to avoid the word or. It's not that there's like one right way to do it and all of the other ways are wrong. That is not what coaching thought sounds like. In this same scenario with Brenda, the client saw 2 options: rent for 5 years or buy a place and in 5 years sell it. Dave reinforced this without exploring any other possible scenarios. Other options could include buying and renting it out in 5 years, buying and using real estate as a way to build wealth versus seeing it as an expense, right? Selling their house in the Midwest and buying in California, renting out their Midwest house and then buying or renting in California. So that's technically 2 different options there, right? And again, I am not saying that any of these options are better. I am saying that during a coaching session, they need to be explored with the client, okay? Now, part of the reason, again, he doesn't explore all the options is simply based on time. It's a radio show. He has a few minutes per person, not a full coaching session, right? I totally get that. But that's why we're talking about this, because if you are listening to that show and thinking that's financial coaching, your experience with a client is going to be very different. You don't hang up the phone with a client and never see what happens after that. You don't talk about like once they took action, what happened? Was that good or bad for them, right? So it's important to be proactive when we're having these types of conversations. That's coaching. Another example from the Dave Ramsey Show episode was a guy named Tyler who called in because he wants to use their savings to get out of debt. He has all student loans and about $1,300 on a truck loan. He didn't say the interest rates, but you can assume based on the fact that it's mostly student loans, what that range might be. His wife, however, wants to keep their savings. She wants to keep investing at the pace that they're currently investing and get out of debt with the extra, okay, which would be a slightly slower approach to getting out of debt. They have $30,000 in savings and just shy of $20,000 in debt and a new 4-month-old baby at home. The question was whether they should take money out of savings to pay off the debt or keep the money in savings and not use it to get out of debt. Here is black and white thinking again. Are we paying off debt and not investing at all? Or are we investing all the way and not getting out of debt? Right? So it's like one or the other. Are we wiping out our savings? Are we taking all $20,000, leaving $10,000 in savings and paying off all of the debt, or not taking anything out of savings and paying off the debt slowly? Here's what Dave's response was. Quote, "Sounds like she doesn't want to get out of debt." Okay, so this wife because she doesn't want to significantly lower her savings after having a baby who is 4 months old. That means she doesn't want to get out of debt at all. Talk about black and white thinking. Another quote from Dave. The only question at play here is what is the right and fastest way to build wealth, and what does the data say to back that up? The only question at play. I can think of 1,000 questions easily that I would want to ask both people in this relationship. And the one question that would not be on the top of the list is, what is the fastest way to get out of debt or build wealth? And what does the data show? Another quote from the show is, if you can't get past what the data shows, you need a marriage counselor. These are quotes. If you can't get past what the data shows, you need a marriage counselor. Another quote from this section of the show was, I would write a check and pay off everything today. And then he sort of ends the conversation, like you don't hear goodbye or anything. He says, I would write a check and pay off everything today, sort of click, right? Now, this one blew my mind. I'm not going to lie. I had to pause it. I had to really coach myself through my reaction to this one. I was feeling sad at this part of the show. I just felt like it was dismissive and frankly deplorable. Tyler shared that he and his wife had a new baby at home, 4 months old. And I could be wrong. I didn't talk to Tyler or his wife, and this was not part of the conversation that made the show. My guess is that his wife and him are reacting to this new life in different ways. Both correct, both valid to them, right? The wife, chances are, my guess, wants security. And pulling so much from savings right now feels really scary for her, I'm sure. Tyler wants to provide for his new family, and getting out of debt is his way of feeling as if he's contributing in that way, right? Again, I totally get both perspectives. I can see the thought that they're having and the way they're feeling and why that is determining their action, right? Instead of finding a way that serves both people well, Dave essentially says that if they don't get out of debt, they need a marriage counselor. I just imagined Tyler hanging up this call with Dave, going to his wife and saying, we have to use savings to get out of debt or go see a marriage counselor. Black and white thinking creates ultimatums. That's how you know they're wrong. My questions for the couple would be, and this is just the beginning, I would have so many questions that we would explore because I would want to coach them in a really amazing, beautiful way. I would ask, how can we achieve both? What's the scenario look like where we can make progress on our debt while funding our investments both? What's the scenario look like where we can make progress on our debt while keeping our savings intact? She's not willing to sacrifice her savings and sacrifice her feelings of security in order to do that, but there might be 1,000 other things she's totally willing to do, right? She might be willing to give up a lot of other things, but just not that. Let's explore that. Let's talk about those options. I would ask the wife, is there an amount you could see taking from savings in order to jumpstart the progress on the debt while keeping most of the savings intact? In other words, it's not paying off debt is like an all or nothing thing. What if we just made progress on it, right? We don't need to pay it all off right now. What if we just paid off 10,000 of it, right? Like, is there a way that we can jumpstart the progress and both of you feel happy with the course of action? What if we took out some money from savings and paid off the rest over time? In other words, why don't we do it both ways, right? One thing Tyler shared is that they are financially doing okay. They're not stressed financially. Money is fine. So I might say, you know what? You've got a new baby at home. Emotions are high. There's so much new happening and you're okay. How do you feel or what do you think about the idea? Again, just an idea, right? They can say no to any idea that a coach recommends or sort of suggests, right? Because I'm not recommending it as like, you should do this. I'm saying, let's explore it as a possibility. What if we waited 3 months and revisited this then, right? Remember from a prior episode, not taking action is an action. Deciding I'm going to wait. I'm going to buy myself a little bit of time. I might even ask him, how can we move some things around so that financially it feels smarter or better to you while we're buying a little bit of time here, right? I would ask Tyler, why does this decision feel so urgent to you? Mind you, there's no problem, right? So why make this decision right now when you know your wife isn't bought into it? I'm assuming this debt didn't all come about in the last 4 months after the baby was born, right? So it's like, why now? In other words, right? Where's the sense of urgency coming from? How can we buy some time and make this financially okay in the process? What if we waited a few months and discussed all of this again in 3 months? Here's what that would cost in interest, or here's what that would look like. Again, clarifying that here's the pros and cons of that decision. When you don't have a new baby at home and there's a whole slew of new emotions happening and everyone's sort of adjusting to a new normal, what if we waited to make this decision in just a few months when, tensions aren't so high, sort of thing? The part about get out of debt or get a marriage counselor, I just think that is a really sad piece of advice to give somebody. We'll talk about that in just a little bit when it comes to shame-based coaching. Another example for this rule is also from the episode, and it was the guest by the name of Tim. He was toward the end, and Dave says, and I quote, "Are you willing to sacrifice now, or do you want to suffer the next 2 decades? Are you willing to sacrifice now, or do you want to suffer the next 2 decades?" And remember, we're talking about like this black and white thinking right now. And those two options, you either sacrifice now or you suffer for 2 decades. Jesus. If that is not black and white thinking, I don't know what is. That is the question that was posed. And I just can't believe that those are the only 2 options on the table. I just can't buy into that. I also just want to say something really quickly, like, who decided that the right way to get out of debt was to sacrifice to the extreme? That getting out of debt should be a painful experience. That there's some badge of honor you get to wear if you sacrificed a lot when you got out of debt. And that is somehow better than the person who is taking their time to get out of debt. I am not saying it can't ever be a sacrifice. If that is how you got out of debt and it worked for you, more power to you. I love that for you. I am saying not everyone has to do it that way, and putting that on our clients is not coaching. Here is why I am so passionate and I get kind of worked up talking about this stuff, and why I want to shout this from the rooftops, even if I piss some of you off. Once you know the model, and again, the model, you got to go back a couple episodes, is that our thoughts create feelings. Those feelings lead to action or inaction, and that determines the results that we get. Once you know that, here is what I think about all of the time, and I'm not kidding you. This is the thought that keeps me up at night, coach, okay? If getting out of debt is painful and has to be done as fast as possible, and if you're not sacrificing a lot, you're not doing it right. That's the thought that we have decided and that we spread to people in this world, right? Have you ever thought about just how many people in our world have no desire? They feel no drive or desire to get out of debt because we've given them that thought. We have decided that getting out of debt has to be a sacrifice. That thought then creates the feeling of like, well, shit, I don't want to get out of debt then. That's going to be way too much work. I have no desire to do it. And if the only way to do it is sacrifice, then I'm just going to like keep my debt. I think about that all the time, and I wish we could change it. And I think we change it by changing the message that you and I are spreading. We've got to shift that. We all decided that getting out of debt must be painful or a sacrifice in order to be done right. And here we say that we want to help people with money. We want to help people get out of debt. I truly want to help people build wealth and take control of their money and use money as a tool to live their best life. And then by spreading that type of message, we are actually creating the problem that we say we want to help people solve. Okay? The message should be, progress is most important, and there are an infinite number of ways to make progress on your debt. Let's figure out a plan for you to get out of debt that is best for you, at the pace that is right for you, in the way that feels amazing for you, that you can be bought into. That should be the message that we spread, okay? Rule number 3 was no black and white thinking, okay? Rule number 4, great financial coaching focuses on the whole person, not just their money. The Tyler situation with his wife, the 4-month-old baby situation, that demonstrate this point as well. Great financial coaching doesn't prioritize a client's financial progress over how the client feels about that progress. And in Tyler's example, the idea that paying off debt is more important than the wife feeling stable and secure with a 4-month baby at home, or that this couple supporting one another during this new time of transition and change, that those things shouldn't be a priority over them getting out of debt, frankly, blows my mind. Okay? That is not coaching the whole person. That is prioritizing their debt balances and their interest and their money over their relationship and how they feel communicating and supporting one another. This is a common theme amongst the advice that Dave gives, where money and financial outcome trumps all else. Money is seen as the most important factor, and decisions are made based on that and that alone, and that's not coaching. One way this shows up most often is people using statistics to justify the action they're telling people to take. So in this case, for example, Dave told Tyler 79% of millionaires studied agreed the way they got wealthy was to get out of debt. Therefore, you should get out of debt to get wealthy. Okay. And I just want to be super transparent. The exact quote from Dave's mouth is 79% of millionaires studied agreed the way they got wealthy was to get out of debt, unquote. And then the rest of the conversation was essentially, therefore, you should get out of debt to get wealthy, and you should tell your wife that. Okay, so that part was sort of my ad lib. I want you to notice, if we were to apply the model, the coaching model to this example, Dave went from statistics, which are the circumstances, right, to action. Get out of debt. Here's the stat, so therefore, you should get out of debt, right? He skipped right over what a person might think about that statistic. Some people may hear that statistic and say, well, 21% of millionaires got wealthy by not paying off debt, so it is possible. I want to explore that route, right? One thing to pay attention to, coach, and this is, I'm just giving you some things to pay attention to in general. This is not just like from a Dave Ramsey perspective, but like just in general, okay? Pay attention to how statistics can be used to justify an action step, but they're sort of applied however the person who's giving the advice sees fit. For example, okay, to say 75% of millionaires studied agreed that the way they got wealthy was to get out of debt, therefore follow the majority and get out of debt to get wealthy, right? So in this example, I'm going to use that statistic. I'm going to say, let's go with what the majority say, because that backs up what I think you should do, and that's how we're going to apply that statistic. Compare that to 80% of people don't budget, so you should be the exception. Be in the minority. Show other people what's possible, right? In other words, in one case, we use the statistic to fall in line with it, and in the second, we should go against the grain and become the exception. All that is happening here, the statistic is the statistic. All that is happening is the person's thought on what they take or what they make of that statistic is different, okay? So in this example, Dave Ramsey is not just sharing the statistic, he is also sharing what he thinks of that, what he makes of it. And then he tells you what you should be making of it too, right? So because 79% of millionaires got their wealth by getting out of debt. And he then takes that and is like, well, I'm going to do it that way. That makes the most sense to me. I'm going to follow those 79% of people. He is then giving his people that thought as well. Okay. They are basing what they tell people they should do based off what they think, their interpretation of statistics. And again, that's just not coaching. That's my point. That is all the point that I'm trying to make, is that going from a circumstance, a statistic, to action and telling people what they should think and feel in the middle of that process is not following a coaching model. That's not coaching. It's educating and it's teaching. And for some people, that's exactly what they want. Tell me what to do. I don't want to think about it, all of that. Right? Which I'm going to talk about in just a second too. Like, why do some people want that and why we have to be careful giving people that when they say that that's what they want. Okay. At the end of the day, number 4 is not prioritizing someone's money over coaching the whole person. And that is another reason why I think Dave Ramsey is not a financial coach. Reason number 5, great coaching isn't making decisions for the client. Are people making decisions because I said so? That is not coaching. Answering a question flat out for you might be easier and faster, but we're not going for the easy approach. We are going for the best approach. We're going for the transformative approach. Coaching is helping a person become the person who can make those decisions for themselves, right? That is what financial coaching is. And I mean, do I even need to share examples on this one? It is every situation on the Dave Ramsey Show. It's Dave saying, do this, and just telling people what to do. It's a full episode of making the decision for the client, and that is not coaching. For Brenda, just rent. Life is simple when you rent. For Eric, I would pay off my house. Thanks for calling in. For Teray, you make enough money. You don't need to sell your house, and you don't need to have buyer's remorse. Literally telling someone how to feel in that case. Just so we're super clear, the advice for Teray on this episode, quote, you make enough money, you don't need to sell your house, and you don't need to have buyer's remorse, unquote. Telling someone how they should feel is not coaching, okay? Also for Teray, quote, fix the dishwasher, enjoy the house, get the drama out of it. Nick, quote, tithing is always first in your budget. I am going to dive into tithing in the next episode. Episode 21 of the podcast is titled, What You Think of Tithing Doesn't Matter, Coach. And the reason I chose tithing is because I am sure that you have thoughts, you feel a certain way about tithing. Maybe it is a non-negotiable on your budget. Maybe it is the very first line on your budget. Maybe you don't ever think about tithing. Maybe it's just not something that is important to you, and a whole bunch of things in between. Chances are you have a feeling about it, right? Like you think a certain way about it, which is why I chose it. What I'm going to do in the next episode is I'm going to put that category of expenses through a coaching model. And I'm going to show you how we apply all of the concepts that I've been talking about over these 4 episodes. Okay. Now, the cool thing is that you can replace the word tithing with anything: travel, clothing, home expenses, business expenses. What you think of those things doesn't matter either. So I'm talking about it through the lens for a specific example through tithing. But we're going to be able to apply that to any category of a person's finances based on the model I'm going to show you in the next episode, okay? But in this case, telling people what they should think of something is not coaching. And in this episode of the Dave Ramsey Show, Nick was told, and I quote, tithing is always first in your budget, okay? Tyler was told, quote, I would write a check and pay everything off today. Now, I want to be super clear, you guys. Some people are quite literally calling in to ask Dave what he would do. So that's fine. Like, if you want to know what would I do if I were in your situation, I can tell you what I would do, but I would also qualify that by saying, but what is most important to me may not be the same thing as what's most important to you, right? What I want you to do, though, is pay attention to the way people ask a question, because not everyone is asking for that when they call in. Some people are trying to understand the factors behind a decision when they make it so they can make the best decision for them. And even then, Dave Ramsey is telling them what he thinks they should do. And remember, the definition of coaching. Coaching is helping a client navigate the development needed to reach a certain outcome. Coaching is helping a client navigate the development needed to reach a certain outcome. Coaching is helping a person as they become the person who creates a certain outcome for themselves, right? A lot of the times when a person wants to make a decision, when they want us as their coach, or somebody like an expert or whatever to make a decision for them, it's because they don't trust themselves when making the decision. They don't feel empowered to make that decision for themselves. So they are quite literally deferring it to someone else. Okay. You may find yourself doing this in business. Okay. I know I did it really early on. I would look to everybody else for the answer because I didn't trust myself as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as a business owner to make those decisions. Right. But coaching is us not playing into that. We cannot enable that for our clients. Coaching is creating a space where the client feels empowered to make the decision. And every time we answer a client for them, we make a decision for them, we are robbing them of that opportunity to grow and develop their own skill set, their trust in themselves, and their own decision-making process. Okay? That is number 5. Sorry for my soapbox. Rule number 6, last but not least, great coaching doesn't use shame as a motivator. Remember Tyler with his wife and their 4-month baby. Not only was it an example where Dave made the decision for them, not only was it an example where Dave made the decision based off what was most important to him, and it was also an example that he made it seem as if there was only one right course of action and every other possibility was wrong. So that's that black and white thinking. He also prioritized paying off the debt or the financial outcome over how the wife would feel doing that. So quite literally, this was an example where every coaching rule was broken, including shame-based thoughts. He also shamed the wife and used shaming the wife as a motivator for the husband to pay off the debt, since that is essentially what Dave thought they should do. Here is a quote from the episode. "She's broke and 24 years old, so her plan's not working. She's too young to be big on investing." So in other words, it's like this: who does she think she is? She doesn't know, right? And she's broke. They're doing fine financially, right? So her plan's not working. I would say if you are 24 years old with a 4-month-old baby, you've got money in savings and you have investments and things are feeling fine financially. And right now in this moment, you don't want to just rip off the Band-Aid and pay off your debt. That is not the same thing as being broke. Okay. Go listen to the episode and notice that whenever a person is prioritizing money and financial progress over all else, Dave Ramsey says, "Good job," and tells them they should feel proud. Okay. But when a person is prioritizing anything else other than money, they're shamed. Eric, at the beginning of the episode, who doesn't know if he should liquidate investments to pay off his house or not, Dave Ramsey tells him he's naive. Teray bought a house and is frustrated with the expenses for it and has buyer's remorse. And he tells her, quote, "You're catastrophizing," and quote, "Tell your drama queen to shut up." Talking about all of these things is not criticizing Dave. I said it at the top of the episode and I'll say it again. Dave has helped a lot of people, and I believe he will continue to do so. But he does so as a financial educator and not as a coach. When you coach a client, you are actually there for their journey, for every step of that process, from one session to the next, from one decision to the next, the outcomes of each one of their actions and decisions, the choices that they make. You don't have the luxury. If you want to call it a luxury, I wouldn't call this a luxury. I love being there for my client's journey, but maybe this would be considered a luxury. You don't have the luxury of giving someone advice, telling them what to do, and then sending them on their way and never talking to them again. You will have clients who don't take action, who don't do what they say they want to do, who come back to the next session and say, yes, I did that, but I hated every minute of it and I won't do it again, or I can't do it for the long haul. So if this plan requires me to do it for the long haul, then I just quit, right? If we give them black and white thinking, if it's this or this and they feel like they can't do this, then they quit. That is not healthy. That is not coaching. You will have clients who say, I don't care about that thing that you think is important. That doesn't bother me, right? The pain of that, maybe there's a circumstance or a certain outcome where it's like you, coach, would never fathom what that would feel like. It would feel painful to you. You would sort of hate stomaching that certain outcome, but the client thinks, I'm totally fine with that outcome. I can handle that. That is okay for me, right? They will also say things like, that's not important to me when making this decision. And you trying to convince them to do things the way you do them, or your interpretation of them, or thinking and feeling about something the same way you do is not coaching. And you being able to coach clients through all of the things that they are thinking and feeling on their journey is critical to their success. You can enjoy and respect the Dave Ramsey Show. You can enjoy listening to it for the knowledge it gives you or insights. There's so much good information on there. And also realize at the same time that bag of tricks isn't going to work for every client you coach. My observation is that the majority of people over the past 15 years who have hired me and my team have tried other ways of doing things first. They've tried the ways that are supposed to work for everyone only to fail, and they internalize that. They sort of think, if that's supposed to work for everyone and it didn't work for me, something must be wrong with me. Or it must be something I'm doing or the way I am that makes it not work for me, right? And when what they need is an approach or a strategy for progress that does work for them, and it is your job as their coach to help them create that strategy. Spreading this message that your way will work for everyone is damaging. The more we perpetuate this idea that money is right or wrong, the more people are going to fear financial decision making because they won't use critical thinking to do it. They will think there's one right way to do it, and I don't know what that right way is, or that one right way, I just don't like it. And so all the other ways are wrong, so I am wrong, right? Just be honest. The debt snowball, debt, paying your house off early, all of these financial strategies that exist are perfect for some people, absolutely, but not for everyone, and that's okay. That's why it's so important to think critically about it. And coach, guess what? That's why we're needed. That is the value we add. That's why people should hire financial coaches to help them navigate these complex decisions that aren't simple, that are not black and white, and where another person can't possibly tell you what your right decision is because they aren't you. They can simply help you navigate that decision and help you prioritize and identify what is most important to you when making that decision. Okay? At the end of the day, all of these things point to one thing for me personally. My opinion is that Dave Ramsey is not a financial coach. Coaching is all about figuring out what you think of something and how that is impacting how you feel and the actions you take. In order to honor the coaching philosophy, I like to end every episode with a question for you to ponder, reflect on, or simply consider. The purpose is to deepen your awareness and help you gain clarity on the episode topic. It also creates the opportunity for you to share your thoughts with me, and I am sure I am going to hear a lot of thoughts on this episode. I would love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts with me. If you are watching on YouTube, drop me a comment with your answer to today's question. If you're listening via any podcast player, take a screenshot of your episode and share it on your social media along with your thoughts to this question. Make sure you tag me at Financial Coach Academy or at Coach Kelsa on Instagram. So here is your question, Coach. What questions can I start to ask in order to explore a more nuanced and customized coaching approach? What questions can I ask in order to explore a more nuanced and customized coaching approach? The next episode, we're going to dive into what you think of tithing doesn't matter. I believe financial coaching is the best and most rewarding way to make a living. I truly love what I do. If you're ready to learn and see how to become a profitable, successful financial coach, check us out at financialcoachacademy.com to learn more about our online courses, free training, and events. The Financial Coaching Toolkit should be released today, which is super exciting. Head over to financialcoachacademy.com, click on Learn at the top, and then click on the toolkit and check out our new offering. As always, I love hearing from you, Coach. If you have any questions for the podcast, submit them at financialcoachacademy.com/podcast. And if you love this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It would mean the world to me. I will see you next week.